Hey, hey, hey. Time for the Out of This World story from rSpace. I guess old habits die hard, especially when someone's idea of growth is circling back to the person they once needed to escape from. Today on rSpace, jail time isn't exactly the glow up this cheater was hoping for. Wife's affair partner tried to rob me after I discovered their affair. Now they're facing jail time. The best way to start this off is by pointing out that my wife, 28 female, had a history of making bad decisions before we started dating. She dated some questionable guys, drank a lot, and did a lot of stupid things. She was a real rebel as a young adult. For instance, she made it into medical school and dropped out just to spite her dad. They're on good terms now, but she still regrets not finishing med school. Anyway, her wild child years were long behind her, or so I thought. By the time we started dating, 4 years ago, she was a changed person. She was getting her life together and swore she'd put that lifestyle behind her. The fact that she was open about it also gave me a little more faith in her. She'd gone back to school and didn't drink a drop. Now she worked a boring office job and didn't touch anything stronger than coffee. But her change didn't last for long, and I had no idea that everything was going to come crashing down. It started with the classic signs. She would come home late sometimes, and when I asked her where she'd been, she'd usually tell me she'd been hanging out with friends. Then there was the way her mood towards me seemed to change on a whim. Sometimes she was super clingy and affectionate, and I'd feel like I had the most doting wife in the world. It almost felt unnatural, like she was trying to make up for her other moods when she was quiet and withdrawn. She would spend hours ignoring me when we got into that state. The lack of consistency drove me crazy, and I started to worry. One thing about me is that I don't let crap fly for long. So one day, when she was in one of her more agreeable moods, I told her that we needed to talk. I brought up every single one of my concerns, about how she would just come home late some nights without letting me know ahead of time, and how it made me feel when she became sour all of a sudden and ignored me for hours on end. I told her that we were partners and we needed to communicate and work together if there was a problem. She just stared into the distance for a while without saying anything. I was confused. Was she mad at me? Had I somehow offended her? And that's when she let it spill. She told me that she had been waiting for the right time to tell me something and that it felt like this was it. Just hearing those words gave me chills. There was no way a statement like that could be followed by good news. I braced myself to hear something unpleasant, but it still hit me like a sucker punch. She told me that she was seeing someone else. It had been going on for a few weeks, and she'd been meaning to tell me. She just didn't know how to. I sat there trying to absorb the information. I wanted to believe it was a dumb prank, but she looked dead serious. She almost looked like she was about to cry. It felt odd. I was looking at the woman I'd loved for years, but I also felt like I was looking at a total stranger. Eventually, I asked who he was. She went silent again, and she couldn't meet my eyes when she said his name. The reason she couldn't look at me was that the guy, Jason, was her ex. The guy she'd broken up with a few months before she started dating me. She was embarrassed that she was cheating on me with her ex? She should be. It was pathetic. Jason wasn't just some ex. He was the one who had supposedly scared her straight. She'd told me he was toxic, manipulative, and always getting into trouble. She'd called him the biggest mistake she'd ever made. When he went to prison over beating someone unconscious at a bar, she decided she needed to turn her life around, and now she was telling me she was choosing him over me. There was a part of me that wanted to protest. I wanted to ask her why she'd choose a criminal loser over a loving, stable husband. It didn't make sense. I was burning to understand the thought process here, but I didn't ask. I wasn't going to compete with someone like Jason. If she wanted to lower herself to that level, then she could go ahead. I wasn't going to throw away my dignity because she had no self-respect. So I sat there silent, not asking for details. I asked her what was next. I knew it was coming for us. We were over, but I wanted to know what her plan for her future was. I reminded her that we'd been saving for a house of our own. We wanted to have kids. We'd even been talking about her going back to college. Jason wouldn't give her any of that. I wasn't trying to win her back with that. I just wanted her to realize what a horrible mistake she'd made. But she didn't realize anything. She just got angry at me. She told me that Jason had changed in prison and he'd turned his life around. She claimed that she thought she was over him, but she'd just been using me to move on from him while locked up. Her heart was still with him. She said she'd realized it when they met up shortly after he was released. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She sounded like an idiot. She was throwing away our life together over some stupid romantic fantasy. All over a guy who got arrested for beating someone up over some meaningless crap. It reminded me of those stupid women who fall in love with serial killers. I didn't beg or cry. I said I understood, and I told her to leave. She stared at me with her eyes wide open. She was obviously confused, though I couldn't understand why. Maybe she expected me to fight for her. That wasn't going to happen. She'd show me what she thought she was worth, and I wasn't going to lower myself to that level. All she said was, "Is that it?" I asked her what more she wanted. She wanted to leave to be with Jason, and she was free to do so. I wasn't going to hold her back, but she couldn't stay here anymore. I wouldn't sleep in the same house as another man's woman. I wasn't like her. She just stared at me quietly. I could tell she was insulted from the way she furrowed her brow. When she spoke, she said, "So you don't care about me at all?" I told her that I had cared about her. I'd loved her more than anyone in the world. But she just had told me that she'd chosen someone else over me, and now I couldn't care less about her. She said it wasn't that easy. People couldn't just turn off their feelings like that. I didn't answer that. I knew she was just trying to justify her thing with Jason. I just told her to go. She didn't fight it. She and Jason had probably been looking forward to the day when they could be together, and now it was finally here. She packed her things while I sat in the living room, still trying to get myself together. I'd like to think I did a good job staying calm, but I was a mess inside. My whole life had just been flipped upside down over some low-life ex that I thought was out of the picture. I wanted to scream and break stuff, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing just how badly she hurt me. She tried to talk to me a few times while she was packing her stuff, but I stonewalled her. I didn't even acknowledge her presence until she was fully packed and ready to head out the front door. She'd called Jason, and he was waiting for her in his car. The gentleman didn't even bother to come down and help her with her boxes. I stood there watching her struggle to get them into the car. Jason and I made eye contact, and he nodded at me, but I didn't twitch a muscle. I just stared at the two of them until they left. When I got back into the house, I collapsed on the couch. I felt empty. My marriage had been cold over the past few weeks, but now the house itself feels cold. I haven't told anybody in my life about what happened yet. Not my friends or family. I'm not sure why. I think I just need time to deal with it on my own before I start bringing other people into it. This is the first time I've talked about it to anyone else, though I'm not sure if it counts since I'm anonymous here. Regardless, it's been helpful just to have somewhere to let it all out. The same guy she swore was her biggest mistake? That's called recycling garbage and calling it treasure. And then the way she broke the news, like she expected you to thank her for finally telling you. Followed by, "Do you even care about me?" Lady, you just admitted you'd been cheating with your prison pen pal ex. What exactly did you think was going to happen? That you'd give her a hug and help her pack? Update. I'm back with an update to my original post, and it isn't what you'd expect. Even I'm having a hard time believing what happened. The whole thing took a turn in a direction that I really couldn't have expected. But first, I really want to appreciate everyone who reached out to me with support and advice. I don't think I was at risk of harming myself like some of you thought, but it was nice to know that people cared. I also took the advice of reaching out to my friends and family. I let them know what happened, and everybody was full of support, which helped me make it through when things were tough. I took about a week before I was back to my normal self. Once I could think objectively, I got to work on my next step, which was to get a divorce. She was already living with someone else, and we were still legally married. I didn't like the thought of that. I figured getting a clean break as soon as possible would be the best thing to help me get over her. I reached out to a divorce lawyer, and we set things in motion. I tried to manage my expectations by letting me know how these kinds of things usually went. It seemed like it would be easy since we didn't have kids or valuable property to fight over, but he told me not to let my guard down. 9 times out of 10, divorce is a messy affair, and things could always get messier. I had no idea how right he was at the time. It happened when I locked our joint account. My lawyer advised me to protect my assets, and that included any shared accounts. She'd be able to pull as much money as she wanted from them. We had the house fund in the shared account, and I'd be danged if I let her take that away. I don't know if she got an alert from the bank, but she called me the next day to ask why I'd frozen the account. She sounded alarmed, like I'd emptied the account. I explained to her that I'd just frozen it to be fair. The court would decide what would happen with the money, and she didn't like that answer. She started shouting at me, accusing me of trying to sabotage her. She said that Jason needed some money to start a business, and half of the money in the account was hers. So he wasn't just a changed man, now he was an entrepreneur too. Jason certainly sounded like a pillar of the community. I reminded her that I deposited most of the money into that account, saying she was entitled to half of the money was a reach, and none of that mattered because the court would decide what happened to it. Once that happened, she and her criminal boyfriend could use her part of the money to do whatever they wanted. I'd been counting on an even split. I'd talked to my lawyer about it many times, and he'd assured me that was how it usually went. But when the divorce was finalized, I was given a larger portion of the savings, about 60%. It felt fair to me since I was the one who paid more into the account. There was also the fact that she cheated on me, but my wife had been expecting something different. That 10% seemed to be the tipping point for her. We'd put aside a significant amount of money on our way to saving up for a house, So it wasn't like her 40% was something to sneeze at. It was all still a lot of money, and it was even more than she'd contributed to the account. If anything, she was coming out ahead here, but she refused to let it go. She started calling me nonstop. I answered the first few times, but all she did was curse at me and demanded her fair share of the house fund. I told her that she'd already gotten more than her fair share from the court, and she wasn't going to get a penny more from me. Naturally, she wasn't happy to hear that. When the calls started getting more aggressive, I stopped picking them up, and that's when she started calling me from other numbers. I guess she was using her friend's number to call me too, or maybe she was using throwaway phone numbers, though I don't know how she could have gotten her hands on so many. I just blocked them all and started screening calls from unknown numbers. One day, when one of her calls slipped through, I told her that I would call the police and report her for harassment if she kept it up. The calls stopped, but the things escalated in another way instead. It happened when I went out to celebrate a friend's birthday. It ran late into the night and we all had a few drinks. I wasn't drunk, but I also wasn't in any condition to drive, so I grabbed a ride home along with 3 of my friends. When they dropped me off at home, I noticed my door was slightly open. I froze immediately. It was a shocking enough sight that I sobered up instantly. I knew for a fact that I'd locked the door before I went in. My friends noticed me staring at the front door, and they came down to check on me. I told them what I'd noticed and let them know that I was sure someone had broken into my house. After a closer look at the door, we noticed scratches and splintering in the door frame. Someone had jammed the door open. I called the police immediately. We were all worried that the person might still be inside, so we waited outside for the police to come. They got there in about 10 minutes. By then, we were pretty sure that no one was actually inside, but we still decided to wait outside. When the cops showed up, they did a sweep of the house. No one was inside. They asked me to go through the house to check if anything was missing. I took a good look around, and nothing really seemed to be out of place. The valuables were still there, and nothing had been turned over or thrown out of place. If not for the front door, I probably wouldn't have even known someone broke into the house. For a second, I wondered if it was just some stupid teenagers breaking into a place for fun. Then I remembered my safe. I kept a safe in the room I used as my home office. It was a medium-sized safe, the type that had to be carried by 2 people, or one person who was really putting his back into it. And it was missing. Everything else was still in my office, but the safe had been taken. I told the police about it, and they had the same thought I did. The thief had gone straight for the safe, so they knew where it was. They asked who knew about the safe, and I told them the truth. Only my ex-wife knew where it was, and what I kept in it. They started taking a report, asking me for details about her. I told them everything, including the divorce and the drama around those house funds. I also told them about her new boyfriend. I had a strong suspicion that she'd told Jason about the safe, and they'd decided to steal it to make up for the money I owed them. The safe contained valuable assets that could be worth thousands of dollars if you knew what you were doing. I had a crypto wallet in there with access to a few $1,000s of Bitcoin. The drive itself was password protected, so the thief wouldn't be able to access it easily, but it wasn't something I wanted to lose. I had a few other valuables in there as well, including an heirloom watch I got from my grandfather. That had sentimental value along with considerable cash value. My ex knew all of this was in there, and she knew it was worth a lot of money. She didn't know the code, though, which would explain why they'd just picked up the whole safe, if it was really them. The police didn't say much about my theory, they just told me that they'd talked to them, but I could see the officer's look of interest when I told him that Jason was recently released on parole. When the police left, I called the 24-hour locksmith to fix the front door. My friends waited with me until he was done. They were talking about going to visit Jason and teach him a lesson. I said I wanted to wait for the police to do their job, but I appreciated the show of support. When the locksmith was done with his job, I left with my friends. I didn't really feel safe sleeping in the house that night after the break-in. Jason struck me as the type who would come back to do something stupid, especially if he couldn't get the safe unlocked. So I followed one of my friends home to crash on his couch for the night. I got a call from the detective in charge of the case the very next afternoon. He told me they'd sent out a unit to check out Jason and my ex-wife. They told him that they wanted to talk to him about a burglary in the area. He agreed to talk to them, but he was nervous and jumpy the whole time. He spoke to them through a crack in the door and denied knowing anything about the burglary. Then my ex came out to see who he was talking to. They said she was drunk and very angry to see the cops. She opened the door to talk to them, and they caught a glimpse of the safe, half covered with a blanket, sitting nearly out of sight in the hallway. According to the officer, that was all they needed to be able to legally enter the house and seize it as evidence. The safe was covered with scratches around the door and the keypad, where they had failed to pry it open. They gave some lame excuse about how they'd found it on the side of the road, and they were planning to return it later. They were both arrested on the spot. Jason was arrested for burglary and possession of a stolen property. My ex was taken in as well, but only for questioning. She wasn't being charged just yet, but the detective told me that might change. Her story was inconsistent, and she was defending Jason's possession of stolen property. They said it was only a matter of time before they could prove she was involved. I was brought down to the station to confirm the safe was mine. It was a formality. Everyone involved knew it was mine. I still had the receipt. Sure enough, I opened it in one try, and all my valuables, my drives, documents, heirloom watch, and emergency cash were still in there. The police asked if I wanted to press charges, and I happily said I would. Eventually, they charged my ex too. Once Jason realized the trouble he was in for violating his parole, he became extremely cooperative. He admitted to the detectives that it was her idea. They'd wanted to get back at me for cheating them out of 10% of her money. She'd brought up my safe and how much the contents were worth. She'd given him the code, and he broke in to empty it out. Unfortunately for them, I'd changed the code shortly after she moved out, so he couldn't get in. When they realized they couldn't open it, they both went into the house to steal the entire safe and put it in his car. A couple of criminal masterminds. She was charged with aiding and abetting in possession of stolen property. They haven't been convicted just yet, but the case is moving forward. They're both facing felony charges, and my lawyer has told me that they're both facing significant jail time. Jason's prior offenses mean he's going to get the worst of it. My ex might get off with a light sentence if she pleads guilty. I have a strong feeling she won't, but anything can happen. I find it pretty funny that I was relieved to be done meeting her in court, just for her to make another stupid mistake. Now we're both right back in court again together. She was able to make bail, but Jason wasn't so lucky. His parole violation means he's back in jail while awaiting trial. My ex-wife hasn't tried to contact me once. I'm sure she's not stupid enough to try harassing me again while her freedom is hanging by a thread. Strangely, this whole mess has given me some closure. Sure, my home was invaded and my property was stolen, but it just opened my eyes to how far my ex has fallen. Seeing her in handcuffs with her lowlife of a boyfriend besides her just opened my eyes to how lucky I was to have her out of my life. Her breaking up with me was honestly just a blessing in disguise. If you're going through anything similar, I want you to know what I had to figure out myself. Sometimes toxic people cut themselves out of your life. Sometimes you have to cut them out yourself. It will be hard at first, but it's for the best. Let them drown in their own poison while you continue to thrive. That's truly the best revenge you can get. I mean, she really tried to rob you because she was mad about 10%? I'm so glad you had your friends around when it all went down, and that you were smart enough to lock down the accounts, change your safe code, and let your lawyers guide you. Cheers to new beginnings, better locks, and a future without felons. Have you ever had to deal with someone trying to sabotage you after a breakup or divorce? How did you handle it? Share your stories with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.